Hi.
And welcome back, or welcome without the back, if you haven't watched my previous video covering episode 1. If you're interested in knowing a bit more about how Arcane came to be and what these videos are all about, then watch the previous video. If not, I'll just quickly give you the condensed version. So Arcane is utterly fantastic and is packed with cool details all the way through. I love the show, so I make videos analyzing and reviewing one episode at a time and put them on the internet. And there you go, you're all caught up. As with the previous video, I will go into full spoilers for the whole series, not just episode 2, so be warned. If you haven't watched the beautiful piece of art that is Arcane, do so first and then come back here. Take your time, I'll wait right here, perpetually frozen in time until you return. And so, without further ado, let us continue where we last left off and deep dive into Arcane episode 2, Some Mysteries Are Better Left Unsolved. Episode 2 introduces the B-plot of Jayce and Viktor discovering Hextech, showing the other side of the coin in the Piltover and Zorn dynamic. Similar to the Zorn storyline, this kicks off at the inciting incident, the apartment explosion from episode 1. We get introduced to Jayce and Caitlyn and see the explosion from their perspective. Jayce has been to the Undercity to buy things for his research. Most of the stuff is probably illegal, seeing as he went all the way to Benzo's to buy it. As we learned in episode 1, Jayce, being the naive guy that he is, put a big target on his back by buying the stuff at double the price and not even haggling.
He paid in gold and didn't even haggle. I charged him double price. Sucker.
Jayce flaunting all his money,
That's your parents' money you're dropping.
or more accurately Caitlyn's parents' money, marks him as a rich pilty who has no idea what the stuff he's buying is actually worth.
How did you know where he lived?
Followed him? How else?
Ekko then tells Vi and the gang where Jayce lives, and that's how they come up with the idea of robbing him.
You really went to the Undercity to get these? Weren't you afraid?
Caitlyn looks at Jayce in admiration as he tells her that braving the danger of the Undercity was worth the risk. This very much speaks to her. She wants to see the world and help people, even if it means getting in danger. However, as it stands, a trip to the Undercity is not in the cards for young Caitlyn. Her parents, well, mom especially, keeps a very tight leash on her. We now learn that in the previous episode, Vi was alerted by Caitlyn dropping something. It seems that even as kids, Kate is inadvertently looking out for her girl. It would be fun to get a scene in season 2 where Vi tells Caitlyn or Jayce of her involvement in the explosion. As the building blows up, the force of the blast sends Jayce all the way to Flashback land as he collapses on the ground. Another episode, another flashback. This time it's Jayce traveling with his mom through what I'm guessing is Freljord, a Nordic-inspired, perpetually snow-covered region of Runeterra. I have no clue what they're doing up there. It's not a very friendly place by all accounts, and definitely not suited for a child. To me, Jayce and his mother look to be from a region called Shurima. I apologize for slinging out a bunch of names of random places, but who knows, maybe we'll travel to some of them in future seasons of Arcane or in spin-off shows. Shurima is a desert empire to the southwest of Piltover. Judging by the look of other Shuriman characters from League of Legends, I feel like this is a decent bet as to where Jayce's family is from, but I could be completely off. This begs the question of why they would be all the way north in the freezing cold of Freljord. Jayce's mom collapses on the ground. 2 of her fingers are affected by frostbite, and as we see later in the episode, she ends up losing them to the cold. Jayce calls out for help in the middle of a raging blizzard, and by some miracle someone actually hears him. A mage of some description performs a gorgeous looking spell, evoking imagery from 2001 A Space Odyssey in the process. Like damn, Fortige went hard on making the magic look cool as hell, and I'm all for it. Magic in Runeterra is often linked to celestial bodies and aspects, which explains why the moon is in some way related to the teleportation spell that the mage conjures up. The mage gives Jayce a magic stone, which I'm guessing holds the same energy as the hex crystals from later on. It looks like the stone is now spent and can no longer be used. The mage would probably not give Jayce such a powerful item if it was still functional in some way. The stone serves more as a symbol of what magic could do, which is why Jayce later wears it as a reminder of what he witnessed as a child. The opening of every episode does a great job of establishing what the episode is about, while providing a backstory and motivation for one or more characters. This opening shows Jayce's fascination with magic and the potential wonder and innovation it can bring. At the same time, it also sets up that a large part of the episode will be about Jayce's story and his dream of harnessing the power of magic through science. As it turns out, hiding volatile mini nukes in your penthouse apartment is not a great idea, as Jayce now learns the hard way. In the foreground of this shot, we see an enforcer uncovering the hex crystal that Milo toyed with in episode 1. It seems this is now the only crystal in Jayce's possession. We now get the first appearance of Viktor. Viktor is a fantastic character. They really did him justice in my opinion. Before Arcane came out, I wasn't sure how much of him we would even see. In the League lore, Jayce and Viktor are very closely linked, so I knew he had to show up in some capacity, but I'm very happy with how big of a role he has. Jayce is having a really bad day. Jayce keeps the stone that the mage gave him in a band around his wrist. He looks at it and understands that his life's work now hangs in the balance. As Jayce looks up, he sees an imposing shadow on the wall. I love Heimerdinger's introduction, it's such a nice bit of misdirection. Now, if someone told me before Arcane came out that Heimerdinger would play a prominent role and not simply be used for comedic relief, I would not have believed it. He's just such a goofy character in everything from his name to his appearance and his voice. Big props to Riot and Fortige for actually making him work in a serious setting, yet another thing that Arcane manages to pull off in spite of expectations. Heimerdinger casually drops the fact that he is 307 years old. Heimer is a Yordle, a race of magical critter-like creatures who are more or less immortal. In League of Legends lore, Yordles are feared and hated, and have to use magical disguises to blend in with people. This doesn't appear to be the case in Arcane, or perhaps the event that caused other races to hate them has not yet transpired. I guess we'll see in the future. I really like this scene transition. It's almost like Vi is punching poor Jayce while he's down. Creative scene transitions are found in abundance throughout the series. This example is a match cut, which is used a lot in Arcane. Here are a few more cool examples of match cuts from various episodes. Another type of transition also used quite a bit is when something moves in front of the camera or the camera moves behind something, obscuring our view and causing a transitional wipe effect. Being animated, Arcane has a lot more freedom in choosing how to tie scenes together in creative ways. These types of transitions would also be possible in live action, but would be much more difficult to integrate and would easily end up ruining the flow by being too flashy or poorly integrated. This is less of an issue with animation, where everything is very stylized and creative transitions don't feel out of place. Movement in Arcane is so gorgeously animated. In this scene, Vi has such a fluidity to her moves, and each punch really feels like it carries a lot of weight. A well-known animation technique known as smear frames is used when Vi punches. As her arms move in for a hit, they are stretched and morphed, which your eyes don't really notice, but makes the movement feel faster and more weighty. The quick cuts to amplify the speed and power of the punches also help. Vi sure doesn't have a lot of competition on this boxing machine.
If she didn't keep fixing these things, I wouldn't keep missing.
Powder with the overly dramatic entrance. I'm guessing she built a lot of this, which is honestly incredibly impressive. Imagine what she could do with an education and proper guidance. I'm guessing the kids and people from Zorn in general have a hard time getting access to guns. Because not giving Powder a gun when they go on their jobs seems like an incredible waste of talent. But then again, maybe giving an 11-year-old a gun would be unwise. And the enforcers are harassing people yet again, clearly on the orders of Slimy Marcus. Well, that guy's not gonna be in Arcane Season 2. These kids have got a serious flair for cool aesthetics. I love the blacklight and neon colors, an aesthetic that Powder carries with her Asjinx. I wonder what the purpose of this giant chomper is in the context of the arcade. It's clearly an inspiration for Jinx's chomper grenades. Marcus is casually willing to gun down children like the slimy scumbag that he is.
You need to hide those crystals.
Yeah, no shit.
I love the sass from Powder. Enter Mel Medada, another principal character not from League of Legends, joining the ranks of Silco, Vander and Marcus. At the start of this scene, Mel's assistant Elora mentions House Pharaohs. In the lore, House Pharaohs is a very powerful house that is responsible for collecting the hex crystals that Jayce eventually turns into hex tech. In Arcane, this may still be the case, but it seems unlikely. Elora also mentions that House Pharaohs has made Mel one of the richest people in Piltover. If House Pharaohs delivered the Hextech crystals to Jayce, you would think Mel would know about it. House Pharaohs is supposedly very powerful, and it's speculated that the chair that's always empty on the council is in fact their seat. A character from League called Camille is from House Pharaohs, and her house being mentioned in this scene makes me think there's a decent chance she could show up in the next season, perhaps to take her place on the council. Mel is picking out a puzzle as a gift to Councillor Hoskell. Instead of giving him a complicated puzzle, she chooses a child's toy. This is a symbol of her power over him and shows how easily she manipulates him.
Good.
Mel mentions being the poorest Medada. As we later learn, her family is from the imperialist kingdom of Noxus. Noxus is located just to the north and northwest of Piltover, a little too close for comfort. Mel was exiled from her family for being too soft, and she clearly still feels bitter about that. Mel's chambers are made to showcase her wealth and her position of power in Piltover. The set design is not only incredibly beautiful, but also says a lot about Mel. The aesthetics of the chamber mostly follows the symmetrical style found in most of Piltover's architecture. The Medada house crest is mixed in with the Piltover aesthetic, symbolizing her position of power at the heart of the city. However, interrupting the symmetry of the room, natural-looking rocks appear to be jutting from the ground. The same rock texture is found on the back wall, which seems to depict an army in battle formation. This imagery and material is not typical of Piltover and clearly references her roots as a daughter of a powerful warmongering family from Noxus. Where Piltover has a clean, bright aesthetic, Noxus is characterized by brutalist architecture with imposing structures of stone. This represents the raw strength of the Imperialist Kingdom. The rocks scattered throughout the chamber is a reference to that. Apart from these influences, Mel's chamber otherwise follows the architectural style of Piltover, which is heavily inspired by the Art Deco movement. Now, a quick disclaimer before I get too carried away. I know very little about architectural styles. What I'm about to talk about borrows heavily from a very insightful blog post that I will link to in the description. I definitely recommend giving it a read if this kind of stuff is interesting to you. The Art Deco movement was a reaction to the preceding Art Nouveau movement. These two architectural styles are used as a framing device to illustrate the difference between Piltover and Zorn. Architecture in Zorn is inspired by Art Nouveau, which is characterized by swirling lines, muted colors, and an emphasis on nature. Textbook Art Nouveau imagery and aesthetics is found in abundance in Zorn. The building that first leads us to Zorn incorporates a lot of the ideas of Art Nouveau with architecture, the colors, and even the vines and leaves mixed in. The record that preludes every episode with our Zornite sisters is classic Art Nouveau. And sorry for getting sidetracked real quick, but god, this record is so gorgeous and I love it. I'm surprised Riot hasn't released the Arcane soundtrack on vinyl with this as the cover art. I mean, that's such a missed opportunity. I don't even own a record player and I would buy that in a heartbeat. Anyway, so as a direct response to Art Nouveau came the Art Deco movement. Art Deco is characterized by straight symmetrical lines, more vibrant colors, and a celebration of technology. Piltover perfectly embodies these ideas. All the buildings are very symmetrical, the colors are more bright and inviting, and technological innovation is their entire shtick. Art Deco was most often associated with buildings and decor made by and for wealthy people. Again, another clear theme of Piltover. Arcane pits not only the imagery and aesthetics, but also the ideologies of these two movements against each other in Piltover and Zorn. Jayce represents a case where these two ideologies mix together. He's very much a man of progress and technological innovation, but he's also fascinated with the power of nature, the power of the arcane. While we often see Jayce in Art Deco inspired surroundings, this shot shows how the ideas of Art Nouveau are also part of him through his interest in the arcane, and how this clash of ideologies make him an outcast in Piltover, at least for the time being. The poster behind him draws heavy inspiration from works by Czech Art Nouveau artist Alfons Mucha. The stylistic influences are no coincidence. The animation studio behind Arcane, Fortige, is located in Paris, so they need only look out the window of their office for plenty of examples of both Art Nouveau and Art Deco architecture. Alright, enough about architectural styles, this is turning into a high school lesson. Let's jump back into the episode, shall we? With the introduction of Mel, the show has now established the majority of the principal cast on both sides of the conflict. Arcane is centered around an ensemble cast. Vi and Jinx are arguably the main characters and generally act as the main catalysts moving the story forward. But beyond that, no character is treated as more important than any other and are all important to the story. This is another thing Arcane does exceptionally well. Balancing 10 plus characters that are all central to the story in some way is not an easy task. The fact that so many people have wildly different opinions on who their favorite character is speaks volumes about how well each character is written. Speaking of the characters, let's do another quick round of who's that voice actor for all our new arrivals. The main man of this episode, Jayce, is voiced by Kevin Alejandro, who has been on a bunch of TV shows before, such as Arrow, Lucifer, True Blood and more. The bestest boy, Viktor, is voiced by Harry Lloyd, another rather big name actor. He has been in The Theory of Everything, The Iron Lady, and of course Game of Thrones, where he played Viserys Targaryen, Daenerys' awful and very short-lived brother. Heimerdinger is voiced by Mick Wingert, who has done a ton of stuff. Too much to name, but mainly video games and other animated voice work. He has previously worked with JP Blanc, the voice of Xander, in the video game Titanfall 2, where he voiced Kain opposite JP Blanc as Cuban Blisk. Mel is voiced by Dogs Ulegundoye, who has also been in a bunch of series. One of these is the Castlevania TV series, which I admittedly haven't seen, but have heard mentioned as another one of the few video game adaptations that are actually good. And finally, a quick shout out to Erika Lindbeck, who is the voice of Mel's assistant Elora. She's in like every video game ever made, it's crazy. She's also in League of Legends, voicing Talia, Zoe and Morgana. Now, we still haven't made our acquaintances with the voice actresses for Jinx or adult Caitlyn, so I'll wait till Act 2 to talk about the performances of Ella Purnell and Katie Leong for their respective parts. We now get a glimpse at another of the powerful Piltover houses, the Kirammans. This is Caitlyn's family, who are Jayce's patrons and are the main sponsors of his research. And they apparently also owned the apartment where Jayce lived and conducted his research.
That workshop belonged to the Kirammans.
It's clear Jayce kept it a secret how dangerous his research really was, but Caitlyn's mother still intends to stand up for him at his trial, at Caitlyn's insistence.
We need to help him.
Caitlyn's right.
Caitlyn's parents are named Cassandra and Tobias. The Kiramman lineage is passed matrilineally, meaning women are the head of the family and hold all the power. This is quite obvious from the fact that Cassandra sits on the council and clearly wears the pants around the Kiramman manor. The family painting illustrates this nicely. As opposed to traditional paintings where the man was the one in control, Cassandra is clearly framed as the matriarchal leader. This also means that Caitlyn is the direct heir to all their wealth and status. Another interesting contrast between Piltover and Zorn is the emphasis on a family name and legacy. In Piltover, surnames hold power. If you're from a rich family like Kiramman or Medada, you're basically set for life, much like in a classic aristocratic society. But in Zorn, names matter very little. This is emphasized by none of the characters from Zorn even having last names. Down there, being born into the right family doesn't mean much if you don't have the strength and street smarts to survive.
We should hit them back.
Trouble is brewing in the Undercity. Sevika is riding people up, possibly on the orders of Silco, slowly sowing the seeds of discontent with Vanda's leadership. The people are sick and tired of being under the thumb of Piltover, which is totally understandable. But Vanda has seen what an uprising leads to, and he's not prepared to go down that road again when the lives of his kids are at stake. With Topside breathing down Vanda's neck, he's left vulnerable to betrayal from his own people. His grasp on control is slowly slipping.
You look weak.
Also, on a complete tangent, the weird guy from the Arcane trailer who never showed up did in fact show up. He's sitting in the back of the bar in this scene. How nice of him to join us.
Why isn't it doing anything?
We kicked the enforcers' butts with just the 4 of us. Imagine what the whole of the lanes could do.
The kids want to fight as well, not understanding the gravity of the situation. Look at Powder down there being all adorable. I love how she pops up into frame.
Spill it, Ekko.
Ekko is evidently not very good at keeping secrets. To Vi, the idea of making a deal with the very same institution that killed her parents and caused constant misery for the Lanes is unthinkable. I was sort of afraid that this would cause a rift between xander and Vi, but I'm happy that it really doesn't, as we see in their next scene together. This is sort of similar to how we expect this scene in episode 1 to cause a rift between Vi and Powder, with the classical trope of creating conflict because one character doesn't know the full story but jumps to conclusions. It's trial time! In one corner we have Jayce Tallis. He is joined by his mother and Viktor in spirit, and sort of but not really helped by Cassandra and Heimerdinger. In the opposite corner he's up against the rest of the council, along with 200 years of prejudice against magic and a very corrupt system of government. Good luck, Jayce! You are gonna need it, my boy. Before the trial we see the councilors doing their thing. Heimerdinger is apparently talking to the robot dude, and Mel is giving Counselor Huskull the child's toy as a birthday gift. She clearly has him wrapped around her fingers, but Counselor Cello is less fortunate with his attempts.
What are you trying to do? Kill an old man?
In comes Jayce, led by Sheriff Grayson. Piltover certainly has a flair for the dramatic. The windows closing on Jayce as he walks past the crowd gathered to watch his sentencing makes for some nice visuals. Viktor looks at him with faint interest, curious to know what his research was all about. The darkness follows Jayce, swallowing up Viktor as he passes him. Mel is looking very intrigued. Earlier on she mentions wanting to find something new, something to put Piltover on the map. She may sense that whatever Jayce was working on could be the key to that. Throughout the trial, Mel goads him on, poking at his ego. She wants to know what his research was really about, but in doing so almost causes him to be exiled.
I was trying to create magic.
At the mention of magic, everyone freezes up. Piltover was founded on the ideals of technology as the way forward, as an antithesis to magic, in order to escape the havoc that magic has caused in the world of Runeterra. And magic has indeed caused havoc, as Heimerdinger tells them. He most likely speaks of something called the Rune Wars, an event that in current lore is thousands of years in the past, but for Arcane is more recent, since it seems Heimerdinger was there in person. The Rune Wars was a catastrophic event where some powerful world runes fell into the hands of humans and were immediately used to wage war. These runes were basically super nukes, so entire civilizations and landmasses were wiped off the map. Unsurprisingly, Heimerdinger is quite keen on keeping something similar from happening again. And also, real quick, the idea of using a literal painting to illustrate how something happened in the distant past is just brilliant. It gets the point across immediately and evokes horrific ideas of the bubonic plague or some primordial evil terrorizing these simple folk. Also, the painting in itself is just gorgeous, which doesn't hurt. I think I used the word gorgeous way too much in these videos, but coming up with synonyms is hard, okay? I'm not an English major or a walking thesaurus, so give me a break. Viktor is super intrigued about this whole magic business.
Please let me speak.
Jayce's mother comes forth to speak for him. She says what she needs to keep him from being exiled, but Jayce is clearly not very happy about it. The council initiates a vote to expel Jayce from the academy instead of banishing him from Piltover. One might argue that this is a fate worse than death for poor Jayce.
Get us killed, or worse, expelled.
Heimerdinger, Cassandra and Mel all vote yes, and Mel uses the power she clearly holds over Huskull in order to convince him to vote yes as well. The vote barely goes through, with 4 voting for and 3 voting against. Jayce gets to stay in Piltover but is expelled from the academy for his misdeeds. Back at the Krusty Krab, we find slimy, sussy Marcus making a deal with the devil, or someone close enough. Silco knows about Marcus's elitism, massive ego, and hatred for people from the Undercity. Ever the opportunist, Silco points Marcus in the direction of Vander's kids, as he circles him like a shark eyeing prey. It's ironic that Silco hates Vander for making deals with Topside, but here he is, basically doing the exact same thing. He does break the deal in the end, of course, whatever the deal was, but still he's clearly willing to be a bit hypocritical when it suits his needs. Once again, Jayce rubs his hand across the magic crystal, now all but certain that his lifelong dream has been shattered. Jayce is framed as if he's locked up in prison, the shadow of the bars on the window caging him in. This is probably Jayce with his father, who may or may not be alive somewhere, it's unclear. As Jayce leaves the room, the bars of his prison fade to black, congealing into a dark mass in the shape of the Piltover skyline. This could represent the dark thoughts brewing in him, eventually driving him to the very edge.
I must admit, his theory intrigues.
If dangerous ideas didn't excite the imagination, we would never wander astray.
Great quote and very true. Yoink?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
That's quite the fish. And that's quite the squid. It's very disturbing that such incredibly vast creatures are just casually chilling in the toxic waters under Piltover.
Up there, no one even knows they exist.
The symbolism is quite clear. Piltover is blind to the dangers looming just below the surface. They created these monsters with their pollution and neglect, just as they created the powder keg that the Undercity has become, filled with festering hatred and contempt, waiting for a spark to set it all ablaze. Also, it was probably wise that Powder or any of the other kids didn't try to dive into the water to salvage their loot in the previous episode. A run-in with a straight-up kraken would probably not have ended well for any of them.
There's a monster inside all of us.
The framing in this scene heightens the stakes of what Silco is offering, as the blood on the cracked cage reminds us of what Shimmer does to someone or to something. Silco eventually convinces Deckard to drink the Shimmer with his very convincing speech. Deckard is afraid, but he craves the power. He wants to be on top for once, just like every other poor soul who falls for the temptation. Jayce just cannot catch a break. The Kirammans have funded his scholarship and his private research for however long, and you would imagine he has been friends with Kate for a while. It's possible they even see each other as surrogate siblings when they otherwise don't have any. As Caitlin says, Jayce's name is no good anymore. He has been disgraced and may as well have been exiled. He is now a misfit and is no longer welcome in the finer circles of Piltover. Caitlin also calls herself a misfit.
I'm a misfit too, I suppose.
Which sounds a little hard to believe when she literally has all the luxuries she could ever want. But just like Jayce is metaphorically caged, so is she. Her cage is perhaps more fancy, but it's still a cage nonetheless. She has no interest in living the posh, comfortable life of a counselor's daughter. She wants to escape the long shadow of her family name and make her own way in the world. Cassandra wants none of that, however, and Caitlin is not yet bold enough to stand up to her mother. Also, Caitlin kind of drives Jayce even closer to the edge with this comment.
Join the Talus Hammer business, I guess?
You can't do that.
No, I can't.
I know it's meant to be motivating, saying he shouldn't give up on his dream, but it only really serves to hammer home the fact that Jayce has no options left. Grayson is getting chewed out by the counselors for not yet having apprehended the people responsible for the apartment explosion. Complete tangent, but look at these people with their champagne and proper posture. They look like they're posing for an album cover. Not sure I would buy their music though. The council wants their pound of flesh, no matter the cost to the Undercity. The framing emphasizes the power that the councilors hold as they look down on the sheriff from high above. Grayson wants to spare the lanes. She has her deal with Vander and knows there are good people down there, despite what seemingly everyone else in Piltover wants to believe. Slimy, scummy Marcus, however, wants to make his mark on the world and wants to apprehend the kids by himself so he can earn eternal glory and possibly live up to whatever deal he has with Silco. And so Marcus goes on another field trip. I didn't mention this last episode, but the Enforcer outfits are so cool and very intimidating. Honestly though, if the standard outfit of your police department makes you look like a more evil stormtrooper, then maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with how you uphold the law. Or maybe that's just me. Powder's patented monkey alarm. I adore the fact that they carried over the simple monkey from the Get Jinxed music video. This music video came out in 2013 when Jinx was first released in League of Legends. This was the first collaboration between Fortiche and Riot Games, which makes all the little details they reference so much more special. We'll get to a few more of these details later, but the monkey is definitely the most important one as it serves an actual role in the story. Great use of framing throughout this scene. The perspective of the camera tricks you into thinking we're seeing the events from the point of view of the kids hiding and show close-ups of them to not reveal their actual hiding place, but it's all a fake out. This is a classic trick used in a ton of movies, a good example being the scene with the ring wraiths from the first Lord of the Rings movie, seemingly stabinating our heroic hobbits at the prancing pony. This painted rhino is also originally from the Get Jinxed music video. Again, the neon colors are an aesthetic that Powder keeps with her as she becomes Jinx.
It'd be a shame if I had to put them on again. Cast irons, well, it's hard to clean.
I would be very afraid if I was Marcus. Certainly wouldn't be the first enforcer that Vander has killed with those very same gauntlets. We now see where the kids are actually hiding. Once again, Powder gets the short end of the stick, having to precariously hang onto a pipe while the others sit comfortably. It's rough being the youngest of the pack. Better luck next time, Marcus. This man just doesn't look very intimidating. I would love to see him pull this move without two big dudes in full gear backing him up. Vi is angry. I guess that describes a lot about her character actually, but she's angry for a good reason. She's afraid of losing Powder and she knows Piltover won't stop coming for them unless they do something. The show uses Vi's bloody fists as a symbol of the idea of using violence as a response to a problem. Vi for violence. The same was done in episode 1, where Vander tried to convince Vi that punching stuff is not the way to go. But she's still not convinced, so Vander takes her to the place where he learned this lesson the hard way, all those years ago on the Day of Ashes. We hear faint sounds of the battle as Vi recounts that fateful day.
We were here, we saw what they did. I grew up knowing I'm less than them. That my place is down there. I want Powder to have more than that, and I'm willing to fight for it.
This is such a powerful line. Vi has lived under the oppression of Piltover her whole life, and all she wants is for Powder to not have to suffer like she did and to have the possibility of shaping her own future. She has known nothing but hardship and struggle and has lost so much, all in the name of Piltover's fabled progress. In a way, Vander is complicit in ensuring that this modus operandi never changes. Through his deal with Piltover, he keeps things stable for the Undercity, but while Topside prospers and moves further and further ahead, the Undercity sees no benefit. This is basically trickle-down economics, and just like in the real world, it does the poor people no good. The only thing trickling down is Piltover's waste and pollution. On the other hand, Vander is completely justified in not wanting any more bloodshed. He feels guilty for all the deaths at the uprising and knows that the Lanes could never win in a war against the might of Piltover. As he tells Vi, no one wins in war, and going up against Piltover would mean risking the lives of everyone she cares about. In a twist of tragic irony, Vi ends up losing precisely everyone Vander mentions, even though she heeds his advice of not going up against Piltover. To Vi, the fact that Vander doesn't have an answer of what to do cements the fact that they are in serious trouble. She begins to realize that there is no good way out of this. As the faint voices of the victims of Piltover's March of Progress are heard laughing, talking, crying out, as the musical sting from the prologue of episode 1 sneaks in, Vi makes her choice to be the scapegoat that Piltover so desperately needs. Jayce is at his absolute lowest. He has been disgraced, abandoned by his allies, expelled from the academy, and his lifelong dream of Hextech is all but shattered. He sees no way out except the final escape. He is driven metaphorically and literally to the very edge.
Am I interrupting?
What's that? Another list with my name on it?
Actually, yes. But only because you signed your notes. Every page, I might add. A little egotistical, don't you think?
Of course Jayce would sign every page of his notes. I like that Viktor doesn't comment on what Jayce was obviously about to do. Instead he cuts straight to the chase, knowing how important Jayce's research is to him. This whole scene is fantastic. Viktor is such a compelling character. He grew up in the fishes, but fought his way to a better life. He didn't have the privilege and luxury of a patron or the opportunities afforded by a proper education. Instead, he simply believed in himself. Viktor gives Jayce his wristband back, and in doing so gives him back the hope that his dream is still attainable.
I don't even know your name.
It's Viktor.
Viktor telling us his name is a very clear nod to people who know League of Legends. Anyone else would be like, cool, your name is Viktor, why be so dramatic about it? But the League fans know. Oh, do we know.
Look, I made them for the enforcers. These are smoke bombs, and those two are full of nails.
Again, Powder's enthusiasm is cute as hell, but the subject matter is a little disturbing. Someone should really tell her that blowing up nails in people's faces is in fact a very awful thing.
They're gonna work this time, I know it.
We don't have too many scenes of Vi being affectionate with Powder left, and I'm not okay with that. Why do you do this to us, Arcane? These poor characters don't deserve this treatment, and neither do we.
You know, Powder, what makes you different makes you strong. Always remember that, okay?
Haley Steinfeld delivers this line so well. The little crack as Vi says strong is great. Vi is barely holding it together for Powder. She believes this is the last time they will see each other for a very long time, and Powder knows something is up. Vi gives Powder the bunny she had as a child, passing it on for her to safekeep. She somehow got a hold of the canister that Grayson gave to Vander last episode and is turning herself in.
Maybe it's not too late.
And as these final few scenes of the episode play out, we are treated to the second contemporary track from Arcane's original soundtrack. This is the fantastic Motown-inspired song Our Love by Curtis Harding and Jazmine Sullivan. 3 locations are intercut as the song plays. Vi prepares to be taken by the enforcers from Benzo's shop. The enforcers are marching down the lanes, moving to where Vi has told them she would be. And finally, Powder goes to Vander as he's closing down the last drop for the night. Powder has Vi's bunny and is served a drink by Vander. You get the sense that they've done this many times, but tonight it doesn't seem it's enough to lift Powder's spirits. Vander realizes something is very wrong when he sees that Vi has given her bunny away. This song, while being one of the more upbeat ones, is just so damn heartbreaking. You've got your goodbyes, your what could have beens for really getting the waterworks going, but honestly, Our Love is up there for me as one of the songs that hits me the hardest. This is Vi, Vander and Powder's song. It's Vi's and eventually Vander's goodbye. It talks about the depth of the love that they have for each other. This found family has been through hell, but has stuck together through it all. But now it seems fate is about to tear them apart for good. At this point the pieces are in place, the stage is set, and there's no going back. Whew. Well, that got a little heavy.
Oh, this is heavy.
Let's wrap this video up, it's way too long as it is. So this episode is mostly set up for episode 3 and beyond. We get introduced to a bunch of characters from Piltover who also have their own struggles despite the privilege afforded to them. An important theme in Arcane is moral ambiguity. It would have been easy to tell an underdog story where we follow Vi, Powder and the gang as they have to make their way in an unfair world with the odds stacked against them. The rich, greedy topsiders are the faceless enemy and need to be brought down to size. But the situation in Arcane is more complex than that. Good, bad and all shades in between exist on both sides, which makes the story a lot more interesting. We are now closing in on the explosive finale of the first act, as Jayce and Viktor are poised to bring Piltover into the era of Hex Tech while Silco seeks to seize power in the Undercity with any means necessary. Well, here we are again, another month, another video. As always, I am impressed that you stuck out to the bitter end, whoever you are, random YouTube citizen. Thank you for watching. And a massive thank you for the nice comments on the last video. I was seriously blown away by how kind you guys were being. I live off the lifeblood of your positive comments like some strange weird vampire, so keep them coming. And I guess that's all from me for now. hopefully I will see you in a month or so for the next video if I can keep the schedule going. I'll try my best, but no promises. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you wanting to listen to my insane ramblings about this awesome TV show, and I guess I'll see you on the flip side. Take care, and until next time, bye bye.